Muchísimas gracias, Miguel, y muchísimas gracias también a César López por invitarme al evento. Ya solo la cena de ayer, con las anécdotas de cosas con las que lidiáis todos los días, ya merece la pena venir a charlar con vosotros. A ver si esto va. ¿Está activado? Sí. No. Va un poco lento, va.
Well, it's a bit
Bueno, voy a empezar la
slow.
charla
I would like to start the talk by asking you to develop a small exercise. I would like you to think of the last piece of news you've read in the internet or or heard by TV, and see if it follows this pattern. A danger which so far you did not know. It appears it's a fuzzy danger. The origin is not known. Maybe it's a remote origin, but this danger has come to us overnight, as it is said in English, while we were sleeping, and it has changed our lives. It's affected our finances in the case of financial disaster, our sense of security in the case of terrorism, and has affected our environment in the case of natural disasters. Most of the news hitting the headlines these days, you'll see that they follow this kind of pattern. They are fuzzy problems, problems distant in time, traveling to us very fast, and the most important thing is to see how the institutions we have designed are completely incapable of dealing with them, especially because of two reasons. As they are structural, they are far away. The institutions have a local power. It cannot reach out up to covering the problem, and also that they are very slow. Living in democracy means following a series of steps, so such fast dangers cannot be dealt with in such a short time. This is no new problem, but in the last 200 years, humanity and society has tried to do something. The solutions may be divided into three stages. Modernity is a stage started in the 18th century. It means using reason to analyze all institutions, family, the city council, church, kingdom, by using reason. And it is the first attempt we had to deal with these dangers. And today it means using engineering to use the best designs. And modernity lasts for since 1850 down to the first half of the 20th century, and it changed because it was considered this form of solving problems. These structures are very solid, but they are not flexible enough, and these dangers are still there, they're still coming, and it is seen that institutions can face dangers at least fast. One of the new philosophical principle reaches society from social sciences, and we're going from modernity to post-modernity. Post-modernity takes every single institution and it disentangles it, not to perfect it, but to turn it into something more flexible, more adaptable. Buildings and bridges are not built with the best materials and the best solidity, but for turning them into something flexible. So when large waves of energy, they can deal with the situation without collapsing. The same is applied to society. Society is not more and more solid, but more flexible. People start migrating. People do not go to university to learn a specific job, but you go to university to learn how to learn. So the important thing for you to do is to be able to change what you're doing at all levels of society. Postmodernity reaches all levels of society. This is one new model of sociology to confront these dangers that can affect it someday. So if you apply this logic of adding flexibility to society with the internet, one can think of why counting on structures. Even if we have structures, first of all, there's still a structure there. And that structure is holding a space that if it's reduced or eliminated, and if we just use technology and social networks to look for talent helping us solve problems, the scene is quite easy. There's a big financial or natural disaster. We use the internet and communication technologies to find the experts who can deal with this disaster. We bring them onto a virtual environment. They are going to deal with this problem, and once the problem has been solved, experts come back to that pool of talent. So we've got the biggest flexibility. This is the situation we are today in, and we can refer to it as post-modernity or gaseous post-modernity, solid, liquid, and gas. The question is if that kind of solution, where there's almost no structure but large infrastructure for social mobilization mediated by technology, can these deal with problems such as terrorism, natural disasters, national security, financial problems we have better than the two former approaches? We'll look into a couple of examples now. Last year, we published a paper which proved that private damage to be paid to insurance holders in the states of New York and New Jersey can only be predicted by the use of public tweets, up to 80%. 80% of the amount which will be paid by private and public insurance companies to individuals can be predicted by analyzing these social networks. And it works as good as famous models. Of course, there must be people in the audience who count on models better than these. But it's incredible that by using this flexibility, there's enough information to predict real-time the damage with a very small level of error. Well, it's surprisingly small, it's 20%, but for the use of social networks. It tells us that we're entering a stage at which these flexible structure or virtually inexistent structure can solve problems. This is a positive example. A negative example would be that of terrorism. 3 years ago, we published a paper analyzing all extremist fora in Spain, and we showed that these fora were capable of recruiting more extremists than any of the existing structures in the country. These fora, without any infrastructure and without running any risk, it's just online fora that people can log in, could produce more extremism than any other physical structure with the staff, the personnel the extremists had in our country. So we also have that problem. We see that these same social structures can be used for negative things, which in turn damage society. The most important thing is to formulate the right question, such as, what is it that happens in the limits of what society can do? Can we use social networks? Can we use technology to solve problems which today not even the institutions can solve? I'm going to try and solve this question, answer the question, speaking about three experiments, the most important ones in social networks. And these experiments were designed by DARPA. DARPA, as Miguel said, is the military research agency of the US. And the question I'm going to try and answer is if that we can mobilize talent which can help us solve problems within the same time scale the problems are reaching us. Let's start with the first challenge. The DARPA network challenge. It is considered to be as the red balloon challenge of DARPA. I heard of these when I was a researcher at the MIT, when I was going through my postdoc training. It's the year 2009, and I got an email telling me, have you got any idea to earn $40,000? And let's look into the link I had been sent. DARPA is the mother of the Internet. The first Internet message was sent in 1969 between the University of California at Los Angeles and the Palo Alto Research Center. And to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Internet, DARPA started a competition to respond to what I've just mentioned. Is the Internet capable of solving problems which no institution created by mankind can solve? The problem they end up with is very simple. There will be 10 balloons, meteorological balloons hidden throughout the states. They will only be visible for 10 hours. The location will be unknown. And the first team of people capable of finding the 10 balloons will be prized with $40,000. So there's not just one single person who by driving through the years will accomplish that feat. So the game means mobilizing people helping me to find these balloons. The best mobilizer will manage to find the balloons more easily. This challenge, which seems to be simple, what DARPA does is to go to every single agency and ask them, would you be able to solve this problem if it was solved tomorrow, put forward tomorrow? And they said that through conventional intelligence, with any other structures, could be solved. None of the structures they have could be able to find 10 balloons in just an hour. Why did I get involved in this competition? It is something which came to me by surprise through an email, but at that time I was researching into a different problem that maybe you've heard of. The issue is an experiment carried out in the 60s by Stanley Milgram, who's considered to be the Einstein of sociology, and he asked a series of people in the Midwest in the U.S. to send a letter to people they do not know in Boston. I meet someone in Chicago and tell him, I want you to send these letters to someone in Boston, but I know you do not know that person. So for this letter to reach the person in Boston, you've got to send this letter to someone who potentially might know this person in Boston. It could be someone living in Boston, it could be someone traveling to Boston. This experiment was carried out, and when the number of intermediaries between the source in the Midwest and Boston, it was found after 6 persons, and this comes from this experiment by Milgram in the 60s. But one side of the experience, which is not that widely known, many sources are chosen, many origins, but most chains do not reach the destination. The ones reaching it is 6 insects, but more than 60% of the chains are lost. The letters reach someone who's not interested on the chain or do not know how to reach out to that person in Boston. This was my research project commended to me by my director, my mentor, and he told me, think of possible systems which would increase the success rate of that experience in the 21st century. These two problems look very similar. On the one side, one problem means how to send letters to people I do not know by the use of social networks, and the red balloon competition means the same, how to use social networks to reach these balloons. I do not know where they might be, they may be, but I know that I can only find them through social networks I know firsthand, and then in turn through other people. The solution I reach is a very simple one. even if it took me some time to reach it. And I'm going to explain it the simplest way. Imagine that we have some $40,000. The final price is $40,000. Divided by 10 is $4,000. So $4,000 would be the biggest amount I could pay someone finding a balloon. But also, I need to pay not just the people finding the balloon, but also the people recruiting people to find in turn balloons. So I need to pay certain money to these people who are not only going to search for them, but also recruit people. The most the easiest way would be, let's imagine that Dave is in Miami and he's driving by road and finds one of the balloons. He's not got news of this competition unless someone has recruited him. So I'm going to pay Dave, who's going to find the balloon. I'm going to pay him $2,000. The person recruiting Dave is going to be paid $1,000, just half. Carol, in turn, was recruited by Bob. Bob is going to be paid $500, which is half of that. And this is repeated to the beginning of the chain. The idea would be that everyone taking part in the recruitment network will count on a slice of the pie. Some of you may think, how similar this is to the pyramid structure, but this is quite the opposite. The biggest slice of the cake is given to the person on top of the pyramid. The base usually loses money, and this is quite the reverse. In fact, it takes us years to show that this is the best way to recruit, both in terms of viral recruitment, political recruitment. There cannot be better solution. This simple way of distributing money is the optimum way. So the next time you see a viral product offering to you to prepare a complicated reward structure, that structure, you will have the certainty that it will not be as good as this one. But I'm not going to speak about mathematics. But by using this strategy, we won the competition in 8 hours and 52 minutes. We found the balloons. This is a picture taken at the Media Lab. Of course, we're not going to keep any of that money because that check will be distributed throughout the whole of the network. We will just test that the structure works, and the money will be paid to the members of the network we recruited. For you to know how this evolves, we have the platform in 36 hours. We launch these before the balloons are visible. We launch it on Saturday night, and the 10 balloons will be visible on Saturday morning. So we only got 36 hours to recruit the people who will help us throughout the US. We got more than 100,000 visitors in 36 hours from 26 countries, and 46 of them were actively looking for balloons. And you can wonder, if the balloons are everywhere in the US, why are we counting on the help of so many people from different countries? We are in Cambridge, which is a suburb north from Boston, but there are many links going to Madrid and coming back to the US. The idea would be the following. To earn money, there's no need for someone to be in the US. What's important is that that person finding the balloon is in the US. Of course, all the balloons are located in the US, but at first, nothing impedes from the rest of the tree to be outside the US. We have example of people that have been living in the US for some time, because I was working for Mapfre Global Risks in New York, and now we've got back in Barcelona, but I'm going to recruit all my friends in New York. If my friends in New York find the balloons, I'm going to make money even if I'm not in the US. That's why this strategy works so well, because purely global strategy. I'm going to show you a typical recruitment tree. This is a full tree. These are all people. There's just an initial seed, our team, 5 people, and the rest of people, more than 100,000 people, are going to start from this seed. Here we have an example of a zoom. You may see that the tree is very deep and wide in just 36 hours. This is what is referred to as a viral propagation. Different resources are going to count on different structures. These are an email propagation. You may wonder, how is it that we can draw this? Because the way in which we knew who you were meant that for you to participate, you had to log into our website, and would you give you a single ID, which would stand for a single invitation for you to send it to your friends. You can place in a message, in an email. So what we did was to map how different media can generate these kind of deep trees and wide trees. The first technical lesson I want to let you know about is that social mobilization is no exact science, but it's a very advanced statistical science. We know it is not that we knew that we were going to win, because we were competing against some 8,000 teams also from Google and Harvard Business School. But we knew we were going to do well, because on these trees you can do statistical measurements which predict the number of people you're going to have on the base of your recruitment tree. This through sociology, which is sometimes blamed for being an observational science and documenting things happening in the past. Through the use of these models, we have statistical models which can predict how much people can you get at the end. This is an anecdotic detail I'm not going to get into. I've been talking about how to create incentives for people to recruit the biggest number of people possible. The bigger number of people I motivate, the wider my coverage of the US and the world will be, and the biggest probability I'll have to have something reaching the balloons. But this was not our main drawback. The main one was to channeling that information and channeling this information. What does this information stand for? Let's come back to the example of Dave driving through Florida. He's going to take down the kilometer where he is, or if he's got a GPS. 2009 mobile phones are not today's phones. But let's say he's got the latitude and longitude of the balloon, and he's going to get into our website, log in, and send us that information. When we've got 10 balloons, what we do is we do a list and we send it to an agency, the Pentagon. And what we do is, as we've got so many balloons and such a big team, we take the biggest numbers of votes of balloons and we send them. But DARPA tells us that most of the balloons we've sent them are not correct. In fact, 85% of the location we got were not correct. What's the meaning of that? Is it that people are getting wrong? Not necessarily. Here I'm going to show you a picture. In some of these cases, we do not have just latitude and longitude, but also pictures of where the balloons are. Someone tells us there's a balloon in Philadelphia, and this is a picture. But these are false pictures. The same location of the balloon, but not the balloon. This picture was made up through Photoshop. There are two additional examples here. These are false balloon, and that other balloon is also false. And some pictures with people in them are also false. This person hasn't got a balloon. With an educated eye, you may see that there's something wrong in this perspective. The challenge, once again, is not just to recruit people for your cause, but also dealing with a strange factor, wanting this cause not to be accomplished. As we were very much surprised regarding fake pictures, we found a series of websites at which some elements started a ranking of teams, and the ranking means the order these teams are going to be attacked. They will be infiltrated, following their own words. What's the meaning of that, of infiltration? As we started receiving these fake pictures, we learned that each of these balloons is protected by a DARPA official with a standard clothing, a standard definition, and that person, if you reach that person and you ask him who he is, he's going to give you an ID. So if we can solve the issue of the fake balloons. If instead of sending a picture of the balloon, you send us a picture of the DARPA officer carrying the balloon, we will know that it's a true balloon. This is an example of a person who found someone dressed the same way as the DARPA officials. He also falsified the coffee mug used by the DARPA staff and the balloon with the number. I want to remind you of these happening just in one day. The fact that there's people protecting the balloons is not available. I'm talking about Saturday morning, 9 a.m. People doing this operation cannot know this. So they are learning as the competition develops. We are in the process of recruiting people, but there's a strange element learning from the information available at the same speed and reacting in a way that introduces sophistication into the sabotage. These people, we got into documents showing how they prepare this kind of sabotage. These people were MIT colleagues of ours. You don't need to go very far away. They're just in the lower floor from ours. Social networks are very powerful. We managed to get the balloons, but there are problems we can deal with. Next competition. You may think, well, this issue of the balloon is so stupid. Finding a balloon is easy because it's quite invisible. Any negative element or any terrorist element will never be as visible as our balloon. And if we want to find people who's been kidnapped, the kidnapped people are not going to be visible either. So you may think, well, you've managed to do that, surprising, but it was a bit of a silly challenge, despite agencies telling us that it was impossible. The next competition goes into what people are really interested in, finding people. This competition meant hiring 5 actors who will play the role of a thief. They have entered into a jewelry shop. They have robbed hundreds of thousands of millions in jewels, and they're going to escape to different countries, in this case to Bratislava and Slovakia, in the US, Washington and New York, London and Stockholm, and they're going to sell these jewels. So we've got to find them before they sell them. We've got to find them before they sell their jewels. There are no $40,000 for this competition, but just $5,000. And it's not just a country where social networks are very much integrated, such as the US, but 5 countries where different languages are being used and social networks are not so homogeneous. Truly, the social network in the US is just a single one, but Facebook, for example, is not that active in Bratislava or in Stockholm. So this is getting into more difficult orders of magnitude. We repeat the same strategy. If you find one of the suspects, we're going to give you $500. This is an example, and the person recruiting you is going to be given $500, and this is ever repeated. The same strategy, we want to recruit people, recruiting 10 other people, so we get closer to the suspect before they sell the jewels.
We find the first suspect. He arrives in Bratislava at 8 in the morning, and at 20 past 11, we find him. This is a picture that I got in my mobile phone. We found 3 out of the 5 suspects in the same period of 10 hours while they're trying to sell the jewelry. We'll lose 2 of them, and we'll talk about that later on. We've finished with the competition because none of the members of our team are able to find more than 3 suspects, and that is a good piece of news for social networks. That means that we're not only able to find 10 red balloons, but we're also able to find people who are hiding. And something important I forgot to say is that the only information we had about these suspects was their picture and the possible place where they were going to travel to sell the jewelry. If with the first competition we had a little bit of a diffuse enemy, like an invisible enemy, here we have a very clear, great enemy. We have another team competing, a group of researchers, military researchers, and this team does several quite sophisticated things. The first one of them could be the top of the page. You can see the official page. So any team which is participating, they would send the picture of the suspects to this web page. But this team copies the web page, and you can see the official one, and you can see the fake one here below, created by the competing team. And what's more, if you actually type tag challenge in a web engine, in a web search, you will find this web page before you find the official one. So a person who's found a suspect and wants to send a picture can actually send it to the fake web page. They repeat the same in Twitter. They copy it. Well, this is the official Twitter account, and this is the fake Twitter account, which is exactly identical, tweet by tweet. And they actually copied. It's not only the same, but it's even got more followers. We have a way to check if the account is actually the official one or not. And one of the things is reputation. If you have more followers, we might think that is the official one. But in this case, it was quite the opposite. This team, which created this fake Twitter account, bought thousands of followers using an illegal follower purchasing service, and we know that because most of the followers were in Thailand and Brazil. That's typical places where followers are bought. And apart from that, this team starts to send cyber attacks, and he actually manages to carry out some serious attacks. And one of the things that came about during these electoral campaign periods, they started the campaign against myself. Personal data is actually revealed, and this is a part of a campaign to actually go against the reputation of our team. And it actually worked, because we were only able to find 3 of the rest of the whole of the suspects. But we received a picture by one person who's in Stockholm, and this person's sister writes to us, and he says, I'm part of your team, and the person you're looking for is my brother. So she offers several personal data, like, what he likes to do, his webpage, other pictures, and it seems like everything is real. We can prove that this person lives in Stockholm, and he's taking part in some Pentagon competitions, so it could be one of the actors hired by the Pentagon, and many more details. We sent the picture to the competition, and they said, no, he's not one of the actors. And we said, no, I mean, he's got to be one, because, you know, his sister's telling us that it's him for sure, but it wasn't him. So we can never know if this is another example of this very sophisticated attack, finding someone who actually could be the suspect, or circumstantial details make us think that he is, but he actually isn't. In the first case, we had a problem with misinformation, and in this case, it's more of a direct kind of attack with a more sophisticated enemy, and we can deal with them, but it's this is proven harder. We've got maybe social networks 2, institutions 0, but the second match we haven't actually won easily. To go back to our example of the study, where we were able to predict the private structural damage using social networks, a question we could ask, and DARPA actually can ask it, is, can you measure real-time measure that there is damage, but not only that, also repair it? Can you also repair it? Are you able to do that? So they organized a competition with which they simulated a natural disaster. In this case, we could have a natural disaster which could only be measured through social networks. There would be no public advertisement of that. They would just simulate that in social networks there was a kind of disaster. So in the competition, the first team who's able to detect what kind of materials this affected area needs. Imagine they're simulating a natural disaster in New York or New Jersey, and social networks say, we need blankets, petrol, we need radios, transformers. So the first team is able to find these materials hidden in 7 places in the United States. We have these codes. The first team who's able to find them and send the codes to the area in need, they will actually win for $40,000. But there was no publicity in the media. So the question is, can we use social network not only to detect an event, but also to correct or to solve and even substitute other kinds of services by firemen, etc.? The answer is no. Using networks with no other way of communication, the competition stops, is empty, because there's not enough dissemination of the information. Hardly any people realize that it's happening. As the simulation wasn't covered by the media, there's not enough public dissemination for people to actually react on time. Social networks are not so powerful or so fast without the help of the media. And that is the conclusion driven by the Pentagon. Nevertheless, in spite of the fact that the penetration of this was quite low, it is not so low as to not have new sabotage elements. It was revealed that there were a group of people trying to establish those brokers. Well, the idea is, I know that in New York they need blankets, a radio and a generator, and I'm going to have petrol and machinery, so I will exchange some elements for others so that we can all cooperate to help these people who are part of this disaster, are the victims of this disaster. Those people who were acting as brokers, they were faking information, they were confusing people. And this tweet is a summary of the feeling of these kinds of people. They just wanted to destroy the competition. First competition, we started quite strong, with being quite successful. With the second one, we actually won, but it was a bit harder. And the third one was a total disaster. Seems like we are, 2-1. If we take this fight, institutions, social network, as the match. We come to this competition organized by DARPA as well, and it's called the shredding machine competition, or the shredder competition. A group of military men, American military men, they get into a terrorist hub where there are materials which have been destroyed using a shredder. But these are vital to know about the following terrorist attack, which will take place. So it is essential to take a picture of those materials, maybe upload them through some kind of satellite, and then put those pieces together in a new document to read what the plans are. It is a challenge related to a thread which has no shape. We need to find what the shape of the thread is, and the only way to do it is using social networks. This problem cannot be solved through computing, and it needs to be solved in a very short period of time, because the terrorist attack could take place in a very short while. So we have 5 puzzles and 5 PDF files. Those puzzles have been the materials been shredded. So the first document would be more than 200 pieces, the second one 300, 1,000, and the last one 6,000. There is no current algorithm which can automatically put all of those pieces together. For you to have an idea, this is one of the pieces we are given, and with this we have to segment all the pieces, and we have to build a virtual puzzle where thousands of people can come, and well, we use the same kind of strategy. If you find a person who can help us with the puzzle, we will give you an amount of money which would be proportional to the number of pieces found. To show an example, if I know that my friend Cesar is very good at building puzzles, I tell him, please help me solve this puzzle, and if he puts 1,000 pieces together, I'm going to give him $1,000, and I'm going to keep 500 out of those. So we're using this to encourage not only people who are working with the virtual puzzle, but also I will do that with the people who are recruiting other people. Using this, we got approximately 3,500 people working on the puzzle, and when New York people goes to bed, then we have people in Australia working, so it all goes at a very good pace. Number 1 was solved in 1 day, number 2 was solved in 1 day, number 3 was solved in 1 day as well. And the question for each puzzle was which country is part of the document. So which country do you think that could be? Right. So the idea is take the document, fix it, and fix it so much as to be able to answer the question. So not only putting all the pieces together, all the pieces of the puzzle together, but finding what information is hidden. At this moment, we have got 3 puzzles solved in 4 days. We were leading the competition using the same techniques used at the beginning with the red balloons. And, we were quite excited because this was much more difficult, much harder. So after the obstacles we found in the last competition, we wanted to actually, support and talk about the power of networks. But something strange happens. This is the progress bar here. If it goes up, it means that many pieces are being put together. So there you have the evolution of the first one. This is the number of pieces that we can put together, and it all goes up. Number 2, it all goes up. Number 3, it goes up. And then in puzzle number 4, we can see that it gets better, and then it just falls down. And then it gets better, and then it falls down. What does that mean? And for that, I need to watch some videos now if they're working. What I'm showing you here Can you play it again? This is the repetition. It's like a summary of how these thousands of people take the pieces of the puzzle and are able to put them together. This is puzzle number 2. And you can see there is a lot of movement, but then quite quickly they can solve the puzzle. That was puzzle number 2, which was a successful one. But then what happens in number 4? You know, if it's all in order, it seems that everything's going well. And now you can see how some pieces are in red. It means that an attacker has placed like a big amount of pieces, and they just put them all together, like a small child would do, just taking all the pieces together and putting them all together in the same place. So after every attack, participants are able to somehow recover the pieces. And you can see how something strange happened. There were several people who got into the puzzle and were able to completely destroy it. It destroys the whole process of puzzle number 4. And can we go back to the presentation? Okay. And these kind of attacks can take place once and again. I will explain to you what that means. Who or which entity has destroyed our puzzle? If you've seen some films with James Bond, at some point there is a moment in which the villain has Bond sitting on a chair, somehow tied up, and he's going to explain why he is so evil and what are the reasons for his and why the plan he designed has actually worked. And I have this moment after the attack at 4 in the morning, in the middle of the competition. I received a personal email by someone who was called UCS the Saboteur. I was working in San Diego University, and he sent me an email explaining in detail how all the attacks had taken place, and again using an anonymous email account. I won't read the first sentence, but you know, it could be in any of the scripts of James Bond films. Explains that in the first attack he tried to take several pieces and put them all together, and he wasn't able to do it as quickly as he needed, so that other people wouldn't realize that, because you know, you see someone who's messing it all up, you will just get rid of that person, just push their hand and then start working again. In the second attack he convinced some neighbors, and using fake IPs, because what we do is that when we see this person attacking again, we could actually expel the person, and they started using systems to hide the real IP. And he was recruiting some neighbors, but you know, 4 and 5 people against 3,500 is not a lot. But in the third attack, he was even more malicious, and instead of putting all the pieces together on one load, he very slowly takes one piece and puts it somewhere else. You know, imagine a virtual table here, it's like a huge puzzle. And then you want to hide a piece of the puzzle, and you want to hide it, and you just put it next to the border of the puzzle. So if you don't actually zoom out, you cannot see that in the borders you have some more pieces, and without those pieces you cannot continue creating the puzzle. You know, I'm lacking the puzzle, I don't know where it goes, where is it? We detect that, and we find it more difficult, and we manage to actually expel that person again. But he reaches a platform. I don't know if you know 4chan. 4chan is a platform, is an online forum with very intelligent people who actually, to say it in a politically correct way, make plans, not always legal plans, maybe legal plans, but not always morally acceptable plans. What he does is to create his own mobilization, saying, please help me destroy this puzzle. When people from 4chan comes, you can see that we count on more than hundreds of people, then they do destroy the puzzle. We cannot stop them. In the email where he's talking about all these attacks, he's actually taking responsibility for them. He finally signs with the name of the team who wins the competition. It's as if he was implying that the team who won the competition is the team who actually carried out this sabotage. So when we talked to DARPA, we said, is it possible that the person who attacked us is the one who won the competition? And they investigated on that, they researched on that, and they couldn't find a link between the attacker and the team who won. That is a topic which is left on standby. But there was one journalist who got interested in this, and he contacted me. He said, Manuel, I would like to find the person who carried out the attack, and I want to know why they did it. I said to him, we tried in all possible ways, and he's a great... He's got a very wide knowledge in this technology, and it's possible that he just covered all the traces. In a cooperation with one of my students, through what's known as the first forensic analysis of a social network attack, we managed, after many years of work, we managed to find an IP and an email which possibly coincide with one person. We don't know who the person is, but there is an email address linked to an IP, which is the only promising link that we have. And we gave the journalist this information, and after a year, the journalist was able to talk to this person. The interview is being published in Wired in back channel. Why did he do that? This is a person who calls himself anti-Reddit, and he feels that the solution of problems using social networks is very blunt and not very sophisticated, and he belongs to a group of people who think that this should be done by artificial intelligence, that human beings and the society have nothing to do in that, and what they're trying to do, until we have the appropriate technology for that, they try to destroy any example of crowdsourcing. Reddit in the Victorian area destroyed machines and textiles, which actually took work from people. So we have an example of that, destroying institutions because they want, people's cooperation, because they want machines to do the work. And to finish, I will tell you the last example. These strategies are repeated once and again in many countries, but the most important thing, or the place where these strategies were tested, was Afghanistan. How is that possible? I would encourage you to read the Sarah Winneberg book, The Imagineers of War, in which the following is documented. At a bar in a faraway region in Afghanistan, this is the only bar where a foreigner can drink alcohol. There are several activists, technologists, American, who are carrying out certain experiments to promote democracy. At a given moment, DARPA contacts them and offers them a contract. If you help me to repeat these kind of recruiting strategies in Afghanistan, we will offer you some money. What do these people do? They use the same techniques designed by us And what they do is recruiting local Afghans, and if they know about an attack which will take place on a convoy, they would actually send an alert message to this group, and this group would alert the military men so that the attack doesn't take place, or at least there are no deaths. And this was done in Afghanistan. It's used in Afghanistan to avoid attacks on these convoys and to avoid civilian casualties and military casualties. When the international military force makes some decisions of, moving troops or something like that, these kind of techniques are used to measure what the emotional response of the population is. And it works like this. Certain people who's been recruited, they give them a mobile phone, and if they send us a good amount of information, just as happened with the balloons, they would get more money for the mobile phone, and even they would get better mobile phones. And this had a very big impact on wars, avoiding casualties and increasing the satisfaction of local people, until this recruiting network in Afghanistan starts receiving threats. There are extremist groups that actually are threatening them and saying, if you continue working with that recruiting network, something bad will happen to you. As the American government doesn't want to be responsible for that, for any of that, the program is stopped because it gets worse. So again, there is an external element which interferes in this global recruiting movement, and that is the element which can actually stop it. If you remember well what the attacker in the puzzle competition said, he's saying that it's really time for machines to solve problems because human beings are too conflictive, they're not intelligent enough, and DARPA seems to be to agree with that. If they continue the competitions, before DARPA got to these kind of competitions, he used technology competitions. Well, the first self-driven car actually comes from DARPA competition. After this puzzle competition, DARPA didn't propose any other one which involved social networks. They just involved artificial intelligence. So DARPA, to some extent, seems to agree with this attacker in saying that social networks are not efficient enough, capable enough, or intelligent enough to solve problems. They are the past and not the future. And to finish, as I only have 2 more minutes, I would like to mention what my hypothesis is and what all of this means, and what lays ahead. As we said at the beginning, we come from very strongly structured societies with very robust and solid hierarchies in which there is a control structure with a plan, and they're going to make sure the plan is implemented. Of course, as there is this hierarchy, ideas come from the same place. So even if the execution is great, ideas could be not so great. So through technology and social networking, we go from a closed structure to a very open structure. This network society means that there is the capacity of ideas flowing from one place to another at the same speed as problems arise. So people can actually move to solve those problems in the same time frame. However, what I hope I have proven in all of the examples, at some point, when this social network has decided to do something, there is always an internal or external element which starts this counter-mobilization against the common will. So we go from the network society to the polarized society. Knowing that society wants to solve a problem, we should be able to reject or censor, or we should convince this external extremist element. But as we have actually blown out the control structures we had before, there is no structure available in any of the competitions I talked to you about. The problem is that as soon as I saw that attacking element, this network never had the power to stop it. We can just, deal with it. But the element was always there. It would just stay there. So we go from a network society to a polarized society in which the main feature would be paralysis. So society has the idea and the capability of doing something, but once they start, there's always a group of people who stop it. And you can think about many examples of things that happen in society. Society wants something, there is a very clear will to reach that aim, but there is a small group which is not very big, but is able to stop it. So when this happens once and again, and when the whole of the will of society gets frustrated because of these small groups, this paralysis becomes the norm, and we go to the last stage, which is what we call the society of bubbles. If I'm not able to psychologically deal with the society in which I am actually mobilizing people to solve a problem, but we're not able to reach our aim, then the last stage would be a society in which I can use this same flexibility, not for recruiting, but for isolating myself. And you can see how in many cases we go from a polarized society to a society in which every single person's hidden. They have created their own world. They have reconfigured society to avoid this hierarchy. And in the face of this frustration and the society in which there is so much conflict, we try to filter it by ignoring it. This is the paradox of the power of networks. Social networks have a great power of mobilization and no capacity at all for control. This is a tremendous risk. That means a more and more unstable society in which we know what we want to do, we're able to recruit people for that aim, but we are utterly unable to do it. Sociology, if it's got something to offer to the 21st century, is this network in which we can mobilize people, and at the same time we can stop these extremist elements which are against the development of society. Thank you. Minutes for questions. Does anybody have any question for our speaker? We are being very punctual today, so maybe we can take a few minutes for questions.
Gustavo.
We cannot get any sound from the person who's taking the floor now. We're not getting any sound from the person. So, do you think of creating a pre-recruitment in specialized fields? Because that's not that structure, but at least you would count on a selection of a pool of potential experts. I think that's quite an adequate question. Of course, you've got to touch on reputation. You're talking about people with experience we know, and the problem is that the kind of problems I'm interested on is problems for which there's no expertise, or at least the expertise is not so easy to identify. They're facet problems, remote problems we do not know. Experts exist, they are out there, but they haven't got them classified. I've got to recruit them for each new problem, and reputation is the solution for these. If I only let people with a reputation to act, I won't have these problems. And reputation in social psychology is referred to as the slowest process to build. So yes, social networks can recruit reputed people, but you've got to have built the reputation with months in advance. So you depend on a very slow slow sociological process when you are in need of an extremely fast social process. There will be problems, there will be issues in the world for which we will not have an expert on. Reputation is important, how to build reputation fast, or reputed like experts, or with something like a reputation. So we've got to divide that into attitude and aptitude. So attitude requires a slower assessment, but the second part, the difficulties, is because we are operating in an open system. If we've got recruitment, we've got open systems, and when we speak about location identification, I'm thinking of geocaching.
Son dos preguntas.
Just two questions. The second one.
Nosotros ganamos a los Boy Scouts y a los
We
geocachers de Estados Unidos.
won the Boy Scouts and the geocachers in the US, so there's a reputation, but they are slow.
La primera pregunta que me hacías,
The first question we were asking is got to do with having recruited it before. And there's something I haven't mentioned. These Paso Saboteur, that's something which is extremely sophisticated. We've got a mini system for reputation. The biggest number of parts you've chosen, the bigger we will let you choose. If you've chosen 100, we will allow you to choose many at the same time. And sometimes they become the best contributor to win the reputation. So in terms of attitude, we would have never been able to filter it, because this person, and I'm not going to give more details, is someone working in Silicon Valley. It can be filtered, but there's that side, not liking social networks. So coming back to the sociology analyzing the Holocaust, the people participating in the Holocaust, they were not psychologically different from those who decided not to participate. Evil is not always, cannot always be filtered. I trust systems, not people. Good afternoon. My name is Mapfre. I wanted to ask you a question. From the slides, I see you referred to 2012 regarding the repercussion of women's in the networks and in this sector. From one year to the next, the growth is incredible. What is it that we should do regarding that? 2012 was still a good year for social promises, for social networks, but in a world like that, there will be no totalitarianism, not more totalitarianism. That's the single view propagated. There will be more democracy, more information, and a better society. It seems it was not 5 years between 2005 and 2017. It seems it's been 15 years. If you look at all the information, social networks have dropped. Today they are considered to be spying elements, totalitarian elements, channels where people become isolated. So the new paradox is that despite the ability of social network, it is not only that none of the promises had been promised, but the dystopic part. There's a bifurcation of sociology, so everything of evil has happened. So the penetration of the ability has become disentangled from its usefulness. So social networks now have a big problem. The problem is not the online conflict. It is the last stage at which people
simplemente se construye su propio universo. Y está todo relacionado desde mi punto de vista.
build a universe of their own because they are fed up with the conflict. I'm sorry, but the gentleman is not using the microphone. We cannot get any sound in the booth.
Se puede controlar, se puede regular, eso entra en colisión con la propia naturaleza de la red social, la regulación. Ahora estamos hablando, por ejemplo, de YouTube, ahora está muy en boga, y cómo es posible que YouTube esté dando cabida.
The gentleman is not using the microphone, so we're not getting any sound in the booth.
Entonces, ¿en qué medida esa amenaza, que parece que tiene muchas cosas buenas, pero se puede volver contra la propia sociedad, cómo se controla eso? ¿Cómo podría la sociedad defenderse de esa gran amenaza que está ahí creciendo, latente, evolucionando?
Posiblemente la pregunta más importante que se puede formular.
Most important question that can be made. I've got a slide, but we don't need it on this subject. We've got a series of cases. One of them is my favorite one, of countries which have solved these paradox. My favorite case is China. China has solved it. There's a series of researches by our colleagues which shows that China has got count on the best suppression machine in the history of mankind. It works this way. China has got the best penetration of social networks. It's WeChat is a giant which cannot be trained even by Facebook. In China, social networks are very healthy. You can send any information, even criticisms on the government. People think that in China you cannot criticize the government. What you cannot do, and what the machinery counting on 2 million staff, is any cause for social mobilization. There's a system described by Gary King, the most important paper on sociology of 2006, describing how social networking in China work as fast as the Western ones, but no social mobilization network comes to light. What is China managing to do? It's got all the advantages of a networking society, but none of the disadvantages of a society mobilizing and generating frustration. So, for you to have an example, China can detect that there is extremism or corruption because people are tweeting, sending tweets on that. So they can use this information to fire that politician or arrest these or that person. But they will not allow any kind of counter-mobilization. The problem with these is that it's not compatible with Western democracy. So the question for sociology in our field is how to adapt that solution in which you count on the best of both worlds, but morally unfeasible to the values we have. You cannot have 2 million people censoring Twitter. Maybe we can find a solution, or maybe the solution will not exist. Maybe that type of control is not compatible with Western values. So in that sense, the East will use that circumstance to overtake us, to overrun us. I don't know if there are more questions. If not, I thank you, Manuel, for your presentation, and we finish the technical part of the day. We will enjoy the leisure side, so we will have